Hey, you and the gardening gloves.
Not sure which plants grow well in Calgary?
Need a little help preparing your yard for drought conditions?
Visit calgary.ca/yardsmart.
And learn how to create and maintain
A beautiful yard and garden that thrives in our unique climate.
planting drought-tolerant perennials, trees, shrubs, and native wildflowers will help you use less water.
Together we can make every drop count.
So dig in at calgary.ca/yardsmart. We're celebrating Garden Moms.
And she made all of the soldiers who were capable of moving get out and garden.
Are you familiar with Lois Hole?
The nice memory of my mom. My mom loved geraniums.
Dad was going down the row and he was planting the onions, not paying attention, and I was going behind him pulling them all out.
My memories of gardening also involves actually coming here. Welcome back to the Helpful Gardeners podcast. Well, if you already didn't know, this weekend is a very special weekend because we're celebrating Garden Moms.
Garden mums.
Garden Moms.
Gotta love it. I always love. They are my favorite in the autumn.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I'll be honest with you, I've never planted a spring mum.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
What is that? Oh, no. It's funny. Like, I've seen them in the annuals department,
Yep.
so I know they exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it does seem like one of those hardier ones that are more appreciated in like early spring
Yeah.
or fall. Because it's like you say, it's like that little burst of color, and it comes in all these different kinds of colors. But they're that cold hardy, which is very nice.
Yeah, and when they get nipped by the frost in the autumn,
Yeah.
and then the snow comes, because then it's winter, and then you're sad. But other than that,
But a good representation of a mom. Right?
Yeah.
Resilient, cold hardy, colorful.
exactly, bright.
Actually, I shouldn't say cold hardy. I know my mom runs cold, so.
Yeah, but you know what? My mum ran cold all the time. Like, my mum complained, no word of a lie, about the air conditioning because there was no need to put it on. The house was only 27 degrees.
27 degrees.
Yeah, she'd have the air conditioning on and sit there in a cardigan.
That's like driving with the window open. And you have your seat heaters on. Like,
All right, mum, whatever. But yeah, no, I do think, like, I know so many mums and women who are just phenomenal gardeners.
Exactly.
They've got that touch, and you know, historically and whatnot, it's been incredible, some of the work they've done in gardens.
absolutely. Like you say, there's lots of mothers of nature.
Yep.
Ah.
Yeah, I like where you did that.
And so I thought it'd be a really fun idea to come to today's episode and highlight some of those mothers of nature. And I had a lot of fun with this because just in like a light dusting of the subject, we both came with one lady in
Yep.
particular. But I mean, I found ladies from, like, for example, did you know about a lady named Kate Sessions down in San Diego?
Nope.
So she is known as the mother of Balboa Park.
Okay.
And she
Balboa Park, like Rocky Balboa?
I don't even know.
Like the
I
boxer?
wondered that too. And I was like,
That's a whole other wormhole.
I know, let's go down that wormhole. But she founded the Green Space.
We could talk about that on Boxing Day.
Oh, wow. Oh. It took me a second there.
Okay, sorry. We'll get back to the subject at hand.
But yeah, she founded the green space of Balboa Park and planted many of the trees growing there. So as you walk through the park, then that's her legacy. That was really cool.
So it was like, it wasn't a park.
Yep.
She found this land, started developing it
Yeah.
on her own, and
that
then they
cool?
turned it into a park.
It's so cool.
And then didn't name it after her.
Maybe she really loves Rocky.
Yeah, maybe that's true. I mean,
I don't know.
Maybe just because she founded the park doesn't, maybe she chose the name. It wasn't named after her. Okay.
Someone go on a deep dive because this was my light dusting, so I
Yeah.
don't actually know.
That is, there are so many things that have to come together to pull something like that off.
Yes.
And then you create this haven in a city for so many people. I've never heard of that. That is amazing.
It's cool. There's also a lady by the name of Vandana Shiva. She's still alive, and she has been working to bring about change in the way of like commercial farming and gardens in India, and really promotes environmentalism and especially female farmers. I think that that's what's really cool. Like if you think about the traditional farmer, you think of like a guy in coveralls
Yep.
with a pitchfork, right?
Yep.
Or like, and that's such a, I know that that's so wrong for so many reasons, but that's like the first thing you think of, right? But you
It's
don't think
the
of all the,
stereotype.
it's the stereotype.
Yep.
Thank you. But you don't really think of all the lady farmers out there, right?
No, again, to go to stereotypes, and I worked on a farm, and I worked with women who were 10 times the farmer I was. And I loved it. I loved my job. But even then, you think about what you said, the farmer, and you think about the traditional guy, the truck, the tractor, the coveralls,
Yeah.
and then the wife in the homestead.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if that's movies or Hollywood or, historically that's how it used to be and that's why we're ingrained.
Yeah.
But sure, it's time that changed.
Yeah. And then the last one that I noticed was actually out of Kenya.
Okay.
By the name of Wangari Maathai, I think is how you pronounce it. She founded the Green Belt Movement, which was like an education, empowering women, rural Kenya through planting of trees. And it gave Kenyan women access to education and then also control over some of the community's land resources. So it sort of crossed off all of these check boxes, right? And she actually won the first African woman to win a Nobel Peace Prize for spearheading the initiative. So
Wow.
environmentalism, and
Yep.
she spearheaded the whole thing. I think it's so cool. So
Yeah.
a few mothers of nature, but I want to hear who you brought to class today, Colin.
So I brought and it surprises people and I don't really know why. I mean, I guess I kind of do. But when I was a kid, we had to do when we were brainstorming about this project, and you said it, and there was one straight to mind.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, this would have been, I guess, elementary school, maybe junior high, but I think elementary, and we were allowed to pick a famous historical person and do a report on them. And I picked Florence Nightingale.
Yeah, which is so cool.
Yeah, and but the thing is what, I think the belt was invented something like 300 years before they invented belt loops. So the belt was invented and nobody thought to put loops on your pants to hold the belt there.
Yeah.
And now we look at it and we look at our pants and we look at a belt and you go, well, how could you have one without the other?
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense. But it didn't make sense. And Florence Nightingale was like that. So back in the day, she was a nurse, Victorian England. She was born in like the early 1800s. And she pitched this revolutionary, radical idea that doctors should wash their hands and change the dressings on the patients.
Revolutionary.
Yeah, revolutionary. Maybe they should be clean.
Yeah.
And she was laughed out because she was a woman, not a doctor, etc. Anyway, they give her a posting somewhere in the region of the Crimean War where injured men were taken to recuperate. And she was known as the Lady of the Lamp. I could nerd out on this for the whole episode, so I'm really trying to be succinct here. I could.
No, give her the breath she deserves.
And another revolutionary idea she had was at night the soldiers would be crying because they were in pain. I mean, we're talking back in the day where amputations were done with a hacksaw.
Yeah.
And she would go around at night with her lamp, and the soldiers that were crying or in pain, she would sit with them and comfort them.
Wow.
Yeah, like, whew, right, what? And then she did something else, and this is what brings her to the subject today, is she started a garden, and she made all of the soldiers who were capable of moving get out and garden.
Wow.
And they had to turn the soil, and they had to add the compost, they had to plant the seeds, they had to water, but then they ate the vegetables from the garden. And she kept it going.
Yeah.
And it was something like, and I don't remember these numbers. It was many years ago when I did this. So I may have a few like nitty gritty stats wrong.
Yeah.
But it was something like her recuperation rate was 90%. The next best was like 10%.
Like not even a competition.
Yeah. And the British government noticed because obviously she's getting soldiers better.
Yeah.
And they're like, whoa, what are you doing? And she's like, well, before I treat them, I wash my hands. Every day we change the dressings, the bandages, we inspect the wound, we clean the wound.
Yeah.
We make them get outside for physical activity to be in the sunshine. and then they garden, which helps with stress and PTSD, which they didn't know back then. And then they eat the fresh fruit and vegetables from the garden.
Yeah. Like,
And they were blown away. Anything I said there now, if you try to present that as revolutionary, people would be like, okay.
common sense, right?
Yeah, like every kids know that.
Yeah.
At the time, they had no idea. Nobody believed her when she pitched it, so she just went out and proved it.
I love that, and it's probably sparked a lot of the studies that we know about today with mental health, with physical health, everything.
Yeah, like exactly. Mental health, allowing soldiers to focus on gardening and being gentle. Physiological health, eating your vegetables.
Yeah.
You're able to move, go move.
I wonder how many of those soldiers took up gardening after the war.
Yeah, there would be so much to take from her as like the catalyst.
Yeah.
And see where it went.
Yeah,
Like,
I bet you couldn't even measure it.
Yeah, I wonder how many hospitals, like nothing to do with the war, started hospital gardens.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
wonder, do you think that's the thing now?
Not now. It was. I remember back when I was a kid in England, there was a hospital. I can't remember which one. I'd have to talk to one of my older family members. I want to say it was the RVI, and they had a gorgeous garden. But now budget cuts and everything else. And
I will say though is the hospital down in the Southwest off 14th Street, the Rocky
View.
Rocky View. So I've noticed on the back end of the hospital, they have this bike path that goes around the reservoir, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you can go out there and they have benches and they have like all this landscaping, and then you look out and you can look across the reservoir. And I bet you a lot of people, I see a lot of people in scrubs. So I just assume nurses, they'll come and sit out there because it's also for the patients. They get out and enjoy a little bit of sunshine, a nice view, some wind, some fresh air. And then it's also for the hospital staff. Like I imagine Florence Nightingale's research also helped the people who were working there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're working in a hospital. It's a stressful job. I don't care if it was the 1800s or now.
Yeah.
But imagine how you must feel if you're working at a hospital and your recovery rate is 10%.
Oh, that would bring it so low. You're like, what am I doing this for?
Exactly. You must, and that's the normal.
Yeah.
It's got to crush your soul a bit. And then suddenly you're seeing people getting healthier and feeling better and doing better. It has to change. The whole mode changed. And if she'd been a dude, if she'd been a man and a doctor and she'd suggested that, she might have been laughed out, but they would have listened to her.
Yeah.
Somebody would have listened to her, and then they would have developed it quicker. They tried to make every barrier so that she couldn't do it, and she just kept proving them wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's...
So if Colin tells you that you can't do something in the garden, you just try it anyway.
Exactly. Just go out there. And you know what, though? Gardening it's... And we're going to talk about this, I know, at another date, but it doesn't matter what age you are. If you're 2 years old and you're toddling around and just being a weird little small human, or if you're a senior with limited mobility, there are things you can do in the garden. And every kid I've ever experienced in all of my career, including people in my family, Harry and whatnot, they love gardening.
Yeah.
They love getting dirty and picking up bugs and digging holes and seeing what's out there.
Yeah.
And seniors, my mum, at the end, she couldn't garden, but she had to have her garden, had to have her flowers, had to have... And it doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter about gender or anything else. There's something so holistic about it.
There is. And I'm glad that we get to enjoy it, right?
Yep.
And be inspired by it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you want to learn more about Florence Nightingale, I know I'm going to be diving into it a bit more. I'm going to post a little bit of information over on our show notes. So again,
you want to hear something else cool about her? Sorry.
Of course.
I got excited. I forgot to mention this part. So we're talking about the Victorian era. Sorry. It was...
like such an outburst.
Well, I think it's a cool...
Wow.
I really hope the point lives up to the outburst.
I'm just going to...
But you want to hear something else cool about her? She had brown hair. No, she did have brown hair. But she was born in the early 1800s. I don't remember exactly when. She was in her 90s when she died.
What?
Yeah.
Well, obviously she was doing something right?
Gardening, eating fresh food, getting out
Exactly.
into
So
fresh
maybe
air.
there's something to be said about that too. Maybe it'll elongate your life.
Exactly. Like she was pushing all the barriers,
Yeah.
all the boundaries. And back then, I'm fairly certain if you were born in 1800, you weren't expected to live 90 years.
I'm curious now. Life expectancy, and she was in England, right?
Yep.
England in when again?
Early 1800s, say 1800, somewhere
Sure.
around there. I know she made it to the 1900s, so I don't know exactly when she was born.
1800s England. This cannot be right.
Why? What does it say?
25 to 40?
Yeah, I'd say.
No way.
Yeah, the life, because that's the average.
Oh, the average, yeah.
Yeah,
And I
so-
imagine all those, unfortunately, people
Yeah.
were passing away in the hospitals
People
and
people
stuff.
dying because of the pollution,
Yeah.
the disease. Think about what the hospitals were like. Think about any complications during any kind of childbirth, infections because they weren't sterilizing
Yeah.
or washing their hands.
Wow.
That's what I'm saying. Like that was the life expectancy. She more than doubled it.
Yeah. Yeah.
She more than doubled the maximum.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she was badass.
So
okay,
cool.
I'm done with my facts now. There won't be any more outbursts. Sorry, I got so
Florence
excited.
Nightingale fan club over
Yeah.
here. So mine went a little bit closer to home just
Okay.
because, and I'm sure I probably mentioned her in the past to you because I personally love her because I used to go to a school, an all-girls school here in Calgary, and she was instrumental in its sort of creation
Oh, nice.
and inspiration. Are you familiar with Lois Hole?
Oh, my. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah, that took me a second, but I'm like, oh, yeah.
I wanted to kind of bring it a little bit closer to home because here in Alberta, she has been just huge in the gardening
Oh, yeah.
industry.
She had a book series and everything.
She had a book series,
Yeah,
and I tell you, every single one of those books was a Canadian bestseller.
yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
I mean, it covered all sorts of things, and there were all things that were pertinent to Canadian gardeners, kind of like when we were talking to the prairie gardeners,
Yep.
and having literature. And back then, like I think when it came out, we didn't even really have things like Google or
Oh, no way.
or the internet.
I would have thought her books would have been 80s and 90s.
Yeah, so she was 90s.
Yep.
So 90s she was writing these books and became such a voice for gardeners all across Alberta. She Lieutenant Governor, Alberta's 15th Lieutenant Governor.
Oh, wow.
So she was in office. She was a badass gardener. And she also spoke to a lot of groups. She ended up speaking to over 600 gardening groups and businesses across North America. She was regularly on the Grapevine segment on CBC's Canadian Gardener. When I think about her, I mean, aside from the office thing, I'm like, this sounds like Colin, but like in woman form. Like speaking to all of these people,
Yeah.
spreading gardening and the love of gardening and just knowledge and making gardening accessible for everybody. And then she was also inspiring young women
Yep.
in my school to grow up and to do whatever you want to do and to reach people and inspire people. And I just think she's incredible.
That is, so I didn't know anything. Obviously, I knew the name. You know you've made it in your career when you can name drop in the gardening industry.
I know, because I was like, Lois Hole, of course.
Yeah, and people used to come in at Golden Acre when I first started, and they would ask if we had the books by Lois Hole. Mm-hmm. They would still
Same.
ask for her books.
Same.
Yeah.
All the time. Even there's a few times where like when I was still a cashier and I would still get asked that, like, even though we had all of these different books and there was so much more
Yeah.
literature and even the internet, and people still trusted in her experience and her knowledge, just all
Well,
of it.
sometimes it's interesting, exactly what you said there, the knowledge. There's one thing to read, we both went to school, and there's one thing about reading a very cold, perfunctory textbook.
Yeah.
The information is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, the information is correct. You can learn from it. But when somebody explains it to you with anecdotes
Yeah.
and real world advice, real world, tangible
Yeah.
experiences, you go, oh, I get it. Like,
Yeah.
you feel closer to them.
100%.
Yeah.
It's much like what we do on this show. We of course we come up with like, here's a gardening thing, but then we also relate it to real life.
Yep.
And something relatable to you, right?
Well, I liked what you said on the webinar the other day when we were talking about pollination.
Yeah.
And I was saying one of the things you can do for pollinators is plant your plants closer together. They don't want them far apart. And you said, oh, it's like a mall.
Yeah, it's like a mall.
That's such a great analogy because there's a reason why. I mean, obviously, online shopping has changed our focus. But back in the day, there's a reason why malls were so successful and still are.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to drive to 8 different locations for those things.
Yeah.
So,
and same like a bee.
Exactly. So when you said that, I was like, that is a perfect analogy. It stayed with me and I'm going to use it. And I'm not going to give you credit.
Okay. I'll be the silent contributor. Is that the ghost writer?
Yeah.
The ghost writer.
I'll give you credit. I always give credit.
But I do also want to mention one really cool thing about Lois Hull is she's from St. Albert, Edmonton. And one of the cool kind of tie-ins to garden centers and why she was also instrumental in sort of that greenhouse garden center mentality is that she did, with her husband Ted, they bought a mixed farm in St. Albert. And then they created Hull's greenhouses and garden. And I went up to Edmonton once only to visit the greenhouse.
Did you really?
I did. I was like, I'm driving
That's
3
cool.
hours just to visit this greenhouse. And it was beautiful. And just like hearing people's memories of, like seeing little kids and knowing that they're going to grow up and be like, I remember going to this greenhouse and like it's a part of their childhood and a core memory. Right. So it's really cool. That was my lady.
Thank you for sharing because I did know the name, but I knew none of that.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And I will pop those notes also into our show notes over at goldenacre.ca/podcast. So next up, I want to kind of round off our discussion with a little something surprise-wise.
Okay.
I just need to open it.
Please be cookies.
Okay, while I'm doing this, do we know any like plants that are mum plants?
Mums.
Mums? Is that it?
I think I think the number one mum plant, it doesn't have mum in the name or anything, is the rose.
Oh.
Yeah. So every Mother's Day, there was a spike in roses.
Oh.
Yeah.
What about mother-in-law tongue? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Otherwise known as the Sansevieria or snake plant.
Yeah.
Probably not the nicest mother plant.
Yeah.
There's got to be a mother.
I mean, if you pronounced it wrong, you could get your Momstera.
Oh, I like that.
It's a Momstera.
Mother name plant. Let me see, just like out of curiosity, and then we'll move on. Mother of thousands.
No, that sounds like it would be like Million Bells, like a trailing pansy or something.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a kalanchoe or kalanchoe. Kalanchoe?
I say kalanchoe, but apparently
I'm telling you, we need to have a whole episode dedicated to how to properly pronounce plants because I bet you I'm not the only one.
Oh, no, but here's the funny thing is that, so quick digress. I agree, by the way. I think that would be a really fun, and there's some that, because of modern lexicon, so these plants were named 200, 300 years ago with a botanical name.
Yeah.
And modern lexicon, some of their names now actually sound quite rude.
Oh, ooh.
Yeah. So we might have to put a 18 plus warning on that
Just
one.
a censor over the whole episode.
But because
I like it.
They give a Latin name.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you take that Latin name, technically it should not change.
Yeah.
But you take that Latin name, ask somebody from London, Scotland, Australia, Texas, and Calgary to say it. You are getting a different pronunciation every time.
Welcome to our houseplant department struggles.
Yeah.
Like somebody will come in with a plant name. Poor Dallas is down there like having to Google and be like, what is this also called?
Number one, you guarantee you would have heard this even as a cashier.
Yeah.
Cotoneaster.
Oh, yeah, Cottoneaster. I said Cottoneaster. Anyway, this will be an episode for another time, so
I love
stay
it.
tuned for
Yeah,
that. I love it.
that's a great idea.
But before we end things off on this Mother's Day episode, I wanted to share a special message from us. Well, in the spirit of Mother's Day this weekend, I went and chatted with some of our team members here at Golden Acre Home and Garden to see what their memories are of either gardening with their mom or gardening as a mom. Hannah Lore and her mom Natalie share a special memory with geraniums.
The nice memory of my mom loved geraniums.
Oh.
She would always have a front flower bed with marigolds, geraniums.
Yeah. Did you ever plant them with her?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does. She did different colors too.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
But there was one time on Mother's Day, we had our planters. She had nice planters, nice geraniums. We brought them in every night. And the one night before the May long weekend, we forgot to bring them in, and they froze.
Oh no. So then what did you do?
She was disappointed, but
She got more and just kept going?
just got more.
Just got more. That's awesome. Oh, I love that, Hannah. Brian and his mom, Sandra, share a love of plants and gardening that started right from his childhood home in Hawkwood.
Already in my mind. The second that you said it, it just reminded me of the house that we moved into in Hawkwood. The family that lived there, the mother, all she did was cook. She had a full second kitchen for her to do all of her tomato sauces and all of her crazy stuff. Like, the backyard was garage, cement pathways, and garden. That's all that was back there. So we went there with amazing soil that had been built for over 30, 40 years, that this woman had been building the soil and growing in there. And as soon as we got there, I asked my mom, didn't even have to beg, just, Mom, can we plant this up and get stuff? And she was all about it. And immediately we went and got seeds and got plants so all over the place that I don't remember where we went. I don't remember what we got. But what I do remember is getting our hands dirty, planting the whole area. And then throughout the year, we'd go and pick meals. And every day I was eating something out of there. So
I love that.
And it was always with my mom. And just, that's when you talk about mom, gardening, times that I love, it was that.
Sometimes gardening means getting your hands into everything.
I remember when my oldest daughter was 8 and we were gardening, and my youngest daughter at 2 was sitting in the garden watching us garden, and I turned around and there she was eating a great big earthworm, and it was good gardening from there on.
A mother's love for her children sometimes means some sacrifices in the garden, and Spencer's story with his brother Jackson is quite fun.
I remember when my mom first started our garden, me and my brother, and we were really young, used to get the hose and we would bring it to the mud and just make a big pile of mud, and then we used to play around in the mud.
Your poor mom, what did she do? She let you do it?
She let us do it. She didn't mind, I don't think. Maybe she did. I'm sure she actually did, now they say that. But no, that's probably my first memory, because we were super young. It's probably like 4 and Jackson was 6.
Yeah.
Really young. So that's probably it. That's a good memory.
I love that. Ellen and her mom, Helen, grew leafy greens in their garden and have a very fun memory involving slugs.
When I was little, we used to help Mom in the garden, and she would get us to do things like wash the lettuce. She had a lot of lettuce. She would have a great big aluminum tub, and she would put all the lettuce in there, and we got to pick out the clean lettuce and watch for all the slugs floating around. Ew. It was gross and disgusting. I still do not like washing lettuce.
Do you like slugs?
No.
No.
I want chickens so they could eat my slugs.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I love that. That's super sweet. You may have childhood memories of painting fences, and Leanna's story with her mom is quite relatable.
One memory that I have with my mom goes back many years to when I was in my early teens, and we were working in the yard, and Mom decided it was time to paint the fence. So we were painting, and she, of course, was going much faster than I was. So I said, Mom, how come you're so fast at this? And she said, well, I've been doing this for a long time, since probably your age. And I piped up and asked the question, you mean you had paint back in those days?
Well, seems like gardens inspire a lot of memories, whether it's harvesting food for dinner, playing in the mud, planting certain flowers, or painting fences. We wish all moms, including plant moms, a happy Mother's Day. And there we go.
That was, wow, Brandy, that was out.
Wasn't that amazing? Like, I mean, obviously, we all work at a garden center, and so we must have been inspired
Yeah.
by gardens at some point. And it got me really thinking. Like, I just love how diverse all of the
Yep.
stories was from harvesting food, right? In Brian's story, and talking about how he used to harvest it and then go in and eat it at dinner time. Like, that's so relatable,
Yeah.
right? Maybe not eating worms. That was pretty
I used
interesting.
to eat worms.
You did.
I was a worm eater. I like Spencer's because they were all amazing stories.
Yeah.
But I like Spencer's not because it touched a note with me, because as he told that story, he had a moment of realization. She didn't mind. Actually, she
Oh, wait.
probably did.
It was probably a conversation.
Yeah, and Bobby is a sweetheart.
But that's also something interesting. Like, no matter how hard you try to make a perfect garden, seeing like the joy, I mean, that was a core memory for him.
Yep.
He remembers, right? Doing that with his brother and,
Yep.
and his mom's garden. And like, she just like said, you know what? Go ahead.
And you know what you can do as well, honestly, if you want to garden with your kids, and I get it, we want our gardens to be beautiful and we put a lot of effort into them and a lot of time and whatnot. Build a garden for your kids.
Yeah.
Take an area and let them do it. Like, I remember, this was with my dad, but shout out to my pops.
Yeah.
There's a photograph of it somewhere. God only knows where. My sister would know. And I went out to help my dad garden. Dad was going down the row and he was planting the onions, not paying attention, and I was going behind him, pulling them all out. I thought I was helping. I have no memory of it. And my dad got to the end of the road, turned around, and I'm standing there, proud as punch, and all of the onions are out of the...
Who knew the tables would turn with the marigolds down
Yeah,
Maine, and
and-
you would be fixing all of the other marigolds.
Exactly. Karma comes around.
Oh,
But
my gosh.
what an amazing tribute. Well
right.
done.
And it got
That's-
me thinking too, like my mom, total gardener, she inspired me to actually come work here because I remember as a kid, my memories of gardening also involves actually coming here. So I lived just a couple blocks away. That's where I grew up.
Right.
And I remember actually coming in and like riding on the cart and then going around the greenhouse and like the smells and the sights and just being so inspired by all the color. And this is why I love the idea of a garden center and why I work at a garden center, because I so wholeheartedly believe in them.
Yep.
and how they can inspire you and educate you and just be so inviting and make gardening so inviting. And so that's definitely, like, gardening is a huge core memory for me.
Yeah. It really is. And that's...
Well, you've made a career out of it.
Yeah. And I gardened. My dad was the gardener,
Yeah.
but my mom loved the garden.
Yes.
She wasn't the gardener because she would have been, but my mom was terrified of bugs.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah. And then my core memory, it doesn't come from my childhood with mum, was when I finally became a professional gardener. Mum was like, well, I'm never planting my garden again.
Yeah. And that's how you spent time with her,
Yep.
right?
And
Yep.
she would stand there and we'd come and we'd pick out the flowers and she'd get whatever she wanted and then I would plant them all for her.
Yeah. I
And-
remember that. I
Yep.
remember you being like, "Hey, what do you want?" And then you would go in shopping with her and then go and plant them for
Yep.
her. And that was sort of like your love language, right?
Yep.
It was sort of gifting her quality time and then also gifting her something that you can bond over. And then every time she looks at that garden, she gets to think of you.
And her birthday was always very close to Mother's Day, sometimes on Mother's Day, because
Yeah.
her birthday, Mum's birthday was May 8th.
Yeah.
And every year, she was so hard to buy for. Typical mum. What do you want? Nothing. I just quality time. If we could go out for lunch, I'd be like, yes, we're going to do that, but what do you want? And then one year I was like, okay, you're not going to give me ideas. And I got her gift cards for Golden Acre.
Yep.
And oh my God, she loved it. She was in her element and she got all of her flowers.
Yeah.
And then Harry and I would go plant.
Love it.
Yeah.
And then you got a bonding time with Harry too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
And then I would pay for the gift card. I would help her pick the flowers out. I would plant the flowers and then she would give Harry the money.
Oh no.
Well, I guess I'll let that part of the core memory go.
Triggered.
Yeah. Is core memory and trigger the same thing?
Let's ask Spencer.
Yeah. And my mum didn't mind. Now that I think about it, she did.
It just takes the cake, right?
It's Spencer and Jackson are great, though.
Yeah, they're really
and
great.
Bobby, I've met Bobby's husband, too.
Yeah.
Great family.
Yeah, great family.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps us up for this week. A lot of love in this episode, you know?
Deservedly so.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're listening on Spotify or YouTube, share your experiences.
Yeah.
What's a gardening memory that you have with mom or of being a mom? You know, are you even like a dog mom?
Yeah.
Like, I would love to know. I mean, you have countless stories of Jimmy in the garden, so I would love to hear those as well.
And you know what? Let's throw it out to maybe people who don't have a garden, but you have your little indoor garden with your houseplants and you're a cat mom.
Yes, exactly.
The amount of times I've had people in my family come to me and be like, I need plants and I need hanging baskets and I need to stop my asshole cats from ruining them. I'm like, I gotcha. So yeah, let's hear all the stories.
All the stories.
Yep.
We're ready for it. You can also reach out to us by email, info@goldenacre.ca. Just put podcast in the subject line and then we'll see it. Thank you for making the world a more planty place, and thank you for supporting and listening to our podcast. We have so much more spring content to come up. So happy Mother's Day, and we'll talk to you next weekend.
Happy Mother's Day, everyone. Bye.